Good morning. It is Monday, March 8th, 2021. This is a virtual workshop meeting of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9 o'clock a.m. Thank you for being here. I'd like to start off with a roll call of the Commissioners. Commissioner Ed Stronowski.
Here.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Commissioner Susan Gay.
Here.
Commissioner Pat Caluzzi.
Here.
Commissioner Jay Legree.
Here.
Commissioner Richard Byrne.
Here.
And Mayor Stan Mills, where we have a full complement and are able to obtain a quorum and conduct business formally today. Thank you all for being here. I'd also like to welcome all the watchers out there that are watching this meeting this morning and remind you that you have that opportunity to participate and speak up if you register in advance. The information on how to register is listed at the bottom of the agenda. Participants registered in advance to be able to speak today at this meeting are Sandy Curson, Rehoboth Beach Farmers Market Board President, Steve Curson, the lead volunteer for the Farmers Market, according to Sandy, Carol Everhart, Rehoboth Beach Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce, Walter Brittingham, Marty Johnson, and Lenore Brady. Thank you all for registering. I will be calling on you at the appropriate times during the meeting so that you can share your feedback and give us input. Thank you very much. As far as support documents, I want to remind everybody that any documents that support agenda items that are available in advance of a meeting are embedded into the agenda. Go to the city website, go to the electronic portal, and you'll be able to access the meeting agenda and documents. With that, we'll go to correspondence. It's listed there. You say we've got a letter from the farmers market and 2 letters from Wynn Ackenbaum. We also, after the deadline, I believe received a letter about the farmers market from Jeffrey Good. I want to thank them for writing. With that, we'll go to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, commissioners. The Junction and Breakwater Pathway, which is the Rehoboth Beach Extension project, begins today. The project's related to the traffic warning signs that we'll be seeing along Rehoboth Avenue when you enter Rehoboth from Route 1. This is a DELDOT project, and it's to complete the low-stress bicycle connection into the city from the Junction Breakwater Trail Network. The project includes the connection of a 10-foot wide asphalt trail through private property from Canal Street to Rehoboth Avenue, and the development of a 2-way buffered bicycle lane along Rehoboth Avenue to Grove Park within the city. The work also includes paving, concrete sidewalks, signage, striping, site amenities, and also fencing, and the work will be from 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. on weekdays. Motorists may anticipate lane and or shoulder closures, and the work is scheduled to be completed prior to Memorial Day. I'm happy to report the solar-powered rectangular rapid flashing beacons have been installed. They're functioning at 3 crosswalks on Rehoboth Avenue, and these were placed where there are no controlled traffic lights. Crosswalks are also marked by bright yellow signs with pedestrian arrows on them, and they can clearly be seen by motorists. So saw them over the weekend, and they seem to be working very well. The restrooms on Rehoboth Avenue have been painted, and all the restrooms, including Baltimore and Delaware Avenues, will be open by the last weekend in March. Regarding outdoor dining and the applications the city has sent out, as of Thursday last week, we had 40 applicants. This is more than last year. Last year we had 28 who were actually having participated in the outdoor dining. 16 of those 28 from last year have reapplied so far, and about 1/3 of this year's applicants will need to rent barriers. We're working on the applications now and expect outdoor dining will be in place on the first weekend of April. Mr. Miller has been working on advertising for seasonal workers. We currently have a advertising campaign to hire seasonal workers. You might have seen that on WBOC. And the ad is also shared on Facebook and the city's Facebook and Twitter accounts. Closure of Robinson Drive is currently underway for a sidewalk project underway by DelDOT. They've closed Robinson Drive between Route 1 and Coastal Highway, Silver Lake Drive from March 1st through April 30th, pending weather conditions for the installation of sidewalks, ADA ramps, drainage, and resurfacing of the road. A detour signage is posted for motorists. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the city manager? Commissioner Legree? I have Commissioner Legree, Commissioner Gay, and then Commissioner Coluzzi.
How's Chief doing, city manager, with the applicants for summer hires?
Not very good, but we're working on it. So, you want to add anything, Chief?
Yeah, we're finally starting to get a few applications in. We are well behind. I have 4 individuals hired. Very few are, 3 are returning officers from previous years. But this past week, we did start receiving some more applications, and so hopefully it'll start picking up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gay?
First, I just want to say thank you so much for the pedestrian lights. I've had several people comment on them and telling how pleased they are to have them, and it looks great. So I really appreciate that. And I know we're going to be talking about the outdoor dining and all tomorrow at our Tuesday meeting, but I have 2 quick questions for the benefit of those who might be tuning in now but won't be tomorrow. And that is, you mentioned 16 of the 28 from last year had reapplied. Are you the deadline is passed, I guess. Are you expecting any of the others to come in, or is this just a change in the mix of applicants?
Well, it's a little of both, but we will be contacting those who did not already apply to make sure that they got the message, and they're not intending to do that.
Okay, well, that's good. All right, and then the other question is just of the 40 applicants, are all of them dining or are some of them retail?
Some of them are retail.
Okay. That's all. We'll talk about it more tomorrow, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Coluzzi?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. City Manager, thanks so much. The lights on the avenue are great for the crosswalks, but I did go out and test them, and I think we need to add like about 5 more seconds. If you're going to cross the entire street from one side, from north to south or south to north, it's the lights go off when you're in the middle. And I was walking somewhat slowly, but I think if we can extend it for about 5 seconds, that might be better. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Byrne?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I echo the positive comments to the city manager and her team for the pedestrian safety lights. My question has to do with the bike route that DelDOT is beginning to work on. Sharon, do you have any more specific information in terms of the location of the private property that you stated that new bike lane will be going through?
Right behind the Sea Glass Hotel.
Yeah. From Canal to Canal to Rehoboth.
Behind the Sea Glass Hotel.
Commissioner Byrne, I have a map of it, and I can share that with you. I can share it with everybody. I'll make a copy.
It's located adjacent or immediately behind the Sea Glass Hotel. So cutting through between, is it Church or Canal at that side down to Rehoboth Avenue.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank
Commissioner
you.
Gossett? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Byrne, you want to follow up?
Oh, that's fine. It's just a little confusing the way they've stated it, but I understand.
Commissioner, I have a map. I have a map
you.
of it. I can send to you.
I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, good morning. This really is a question for the chief with regards to the new pedestrian cross signals. what is the code or the law that really addresses that? Is it stated that when they're blinking, a vehicle must stop, or does someone have to be present in the crosswalk, or how does it, so we can remind citizens really what this means when they see the flashing lights?
Well, excuse me. Delaware law says, traffic has to stop when a pedestrian is in the walkway. So they actually have to take a step off the curb. When the lights start blinking or whatever, it's a signal for the drivers to, begin to slow down and stop before the crosswalk and let people cross safely and all. So, but technically by the letter of the law, it has to do when a person's, committed to start walking in the, roadway. And also, what I saw this weekend that, as several of you have already mentioned, it has been working and it's starting to become utilized or whatever. So I think it is a clear message. And with the lights, what I'm seeing so far too is it's allowing both lanes to want to stop and knowing that they need to stop. Before, one was always scared to stop because thought the pedestrian was blocked by the other vehicle. So now both lanes are slowing down. So, but the letter of law states they have to be in the roadway before somebody has to stop.
Okay, thank you.
Chief. Thank you. Commissioner Legree, did you put your hand down or?
I put my hand down.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, we'll go to the next item, but first I was remiss. I want to identify others in attendance with me today for this meeting. I've got City Manager Sharon Lynn, City Solicitor Glenn Mandalis, Chief of Police Keith Banks, Public Works Supervisor Kevin Williams, Project Coordinator Evan Miller, and Head of the IT Department Max Hamby. I'm just want to thank them for being here and just remind everybody it takes a big crew to be able to conduct this meeting and get it to come off right and to get their input. Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to the City Solicitor's report. Glenn?
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to mention, in case you hadn't heard, the Planning Commission has canceled their meeting for this Friday. They've been doing a lot of work on a lot of different things and ready for a little bit of time off. They're going to turn to the CDP pretty quickly, though, at their next meeting. Also wanted to mention that this Wednesday at 2 o'clock, we're going to do training for the Parks and Shade Tree Commission. There's a new chairperson and 2 new members. Thought it was a good time to kind of remind everybody sort of the portions of the code that are most applicable to the appeals they hear. So we'll be doing that Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Glenn. And would like to reiterate that the training for the Parks and Shade Tree Commission is mandatory. If they can't make it, then they need to watch it and meet with Glenn separately. This is being live streamed. It's also being recorded so that it can be used in the future to help train new members of that committee. I think it'll be a very valuable session that y'all can watch live or tape. Thank you, Glenn, for coming up with that program. Are there any questions for the City Solicitor? If not, we'll move on to the next is a committee report from Street and Transportation Committee, including but not limited to discussion on the use of sharrows on city streets to enhance bicyclist safety. We'll turn to the chair of the Street and Transportation Committee, Commissioner Pat Caluzzi.
Thank you, Mayor. So we had basically just that one item on our agenda, and there was a lot of discussion. It centered around bike lanes, sharrows, and potential for a bike box. I guess really how one of the things that was the driving force are the entry points into the city or the gateways. So with that, you know, we have coming in via Rehoboth Avenue, via State Road, via the Bayard, and also Henlopen Avenue when you're coming in from North Shores. So with that, we found it very important. And in fact, the vote, we voted on this issue. We decided that sharrows were the way to go this year. There was potential for bike lanes in various places, State Road, help me out, Susan. Where was the other one?
For the bike lane?
Yeah, we talked about
Coming around the circle? coming up Rehoboth Avenue?
Yeah, no, we want, it doesn't matter at this point. The point being is that we decided that Sharrows were the way to go. And there was a vote and 5-1 decided the following, that Sharrows should be on Rehoboth Avenue, State Road, Bayard Avenue, and Open Avenue.
Open, right.
Pat, can you, I interrupt you for a minute? Is this what you're talking about?
Yes.
Oh, good, wait a minute.
It went off.
Yes.
Yes.
This is a Sharrow?
That's
Correct.
a Sharrow. And the uniform traffic control specifies the number of feet in between each one. Chief Banks and Kevin Williams attended our meeting and understand, as long as the commissioners are in agreement with this, that they will move forward. Kevin Williams and his team will move forward in putting these Sharrows down. So I suspect there's a lot of discussion, and there's probably going to be a lot of folks from the various roads that may or may not feel good about this. So anyway, that's what we have recommended. I also, two other things. We talked about that Rehoboth is not considered a bicycle-friendly city. There are some hoops we have to jump through to be able to be a bicycle-friendly city, which would be, I think, a very good thing to do. Lewis is a bicycle-friendly city. I think we will work towards doing that, of being deemed a bicycle-friendly city. The second thing is, unfortunately, Bruce Kaufman will be leaving our committee. He's made great contributions. He's moving from the area, so we do now have a vacancy, and I've talked to the mayor about advertising for other members. So that's all I have. And I'm sure, I don't know if anyone else wants to comment or talk about the Sharrows. I certainly would like to hear it.
I guess what I'd like to know is, what is the program going forward? Do you expect something from us, a nod or a thumbs up or down? Or is this something that, for awareness, and you want to work with the chief and Sharon on implementing? My only comment is, I think they're very valuable, but I think the placement is critical. I don't know if you remember, Pat, but when they were first installed, they were actually placed by city workers such that if you followed and bicycled over the Sharrow, you would likely end up head on into a car or that's parked or coming at you. And we still have remnants of some of those around town. So I think again, the placement, I think, is very critical. And I think there has to be enough of them to have meaning. I don't know if Sharon has an opinion on that either, but we can, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the chief, as I said, the chief and Kevin were in our meeting, and the chief knows by the uniform traffic code, they're supposed to be a certain number of feet apart, and certainly, in the proper lane, of course. So, Chief, do you want to comment or?
And no, if the commissioners and city managers ask us to move forward, I'll be working with Kevin and Evan to make that happen. Really, it's Bill at the sign shop that takes care of it and knows all the regulations, but we would make sure we follow the
Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, good morning. Thank you for the Streets and Transportation Committee to work on this issue. I think it's very important. But if you could bring a more formal presentation, if you will, specifically if a map that outlines the streets that would specifically have the Sharrows placed on them. Also, is there signage involved? I know in other cities, it's like share the road or a communication or informational plan to let people know exactly what these means and how to react to them. Is that something that we could have a little more specificness to the program that you intend?
Yeah, no, we did not actually discuss signs, although I think that's a good idea, maybe perhaps to have them at the gateway entrances that say, basically share the road. So we probably would be looking at 4 signs. And as for drawing up the map, we certainly could do that. And I will have that ready for the next meeting. But I wanted to get, a consensus from the commissioners that we want to move forward with this. So it's recommended by the Streets and Transportation, and I'm hoping this body will be in agreement that it's something that we would like to move forward with. Based on
I think that it's something to move.
that's the way we would do it. So
Well, again, I think the concept is great, but I would just like to see a little more specificity about where and when and how, and the communication plan and all of that type of information. And actually also the cost involved for the program, to man hours, sign painting cost, and that type of stuff. Just what it's going to cost, the investment to the city to make it a safer city for bicyclists. And then also, could you share with the commissioners and even for the public, you use the phrase bicycle-friendly city, and just what are the criteria to become a bicycle-friendly city? And then also, what are the benefits of that?
right. So there is a criteria. There's an organization that will deem you as a bicycle-friendly city. I don't have that information with me, but I will email it to all the commissioners so as we move forward in trying to look at being able to be a bicycle-friendly city. So I'll get that to you.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Well, I think a map might be a good idea, because we can also use that for marketing when the time comes. Give it to the media and let them splash the headlines across the top of the paper and market that. Commissioner, and I think time-wise, we have time. We could certainly put it on the regular meeting agenda if you wanted, so that there's no big loss of time. Commissioner Byrne.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Caluzzi and your committee. I also like this concept, but I am curious. It seems to me that for several years, we've been directing incoming bikes coming from the west across the Canal Bridge to turn on Canal Street, and then 6th and Grove across State Road. And that's obviously, and no one would argue it, a safer route for bikes. And then particularly given the fact that we're going to, in the next year or so, have formal pedestrian and bicycle crossing at Grove, Munson, where they hit State Road. So what does this do to Rehoboth Avenue and bikes? Then how does that?
I can list this for you, because back in 2012, I think, when we did the bicycle master plan, that was something that we really pressed on, was to try to get people off of the avenue. So we have this, and you've probably seen that on top of the road, street signs. There's safe path to the beach,
Right,
and so forth. So, that's one of the things we tried to do, was get people to make that right turn when they come into town, if they're going to the beach, to head that way. And I believe it was down through Stokely, it would terminate at Stokely in the boardwalk. That was one of the safe routes. But we also recognize that so many bicyclists come in and want to go on the avenue, either to restaurants, for shopping, or they just want to put their bike and walk down to the beach that way. So although we would love it if people stayed off the avenue, the reality is they're not going to. So the shares were more for the drivers' vehicles than they are for the people who are riding bikes. So they are aware that they need to share the road.
okay, well, that's very helpful to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, I just wanted to add this thing about a bicycle-friendly city. It was actually, I think, Friday when one of our committee members, David Mann, sent around some information on this accrediting sort of national organization that designates bicycle-friendly cities. And it's a little bit like being a tree city, but the criteria are much more. There are many, many more steps involved to getting to becoming a bicycle-friendly city. And looking at some of the criteria, both our size and our population may make it a little difficult, but it's based on a complete streets, the sort of national complete streets initiative that frankly was in the 2010 CDP as a goal, and I don't think was realized. And so when I look at this the list of criteria, I think it would be a wonderful goal. So Pat, I hope you will, send that out to everyone.
I will.
But that's what that's about. And there are three towns in Delaware, I believe. Lewis actually just got designated recently, and Newark, and I forget what the third one is. Yeah, Dover, I think. Yeah.
Well, I seem to be collecting more agenda items for a regular meeting in March for the Street and Transportation Committee, and that is addressing some of Commissioner Gossett's concerns and creating a map and any guidelines and share pricing information. Share with us the mapping of the bicyclists coming in and going out over the canal per the Del Dot project that Sharon articulated earlier that's coming up. And then maybe a quick overview of bicycle-friendly criteria. Commissioner Legree, you just took your hand down?
Yeah, I'll get all that information when we have the meeting. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else? Anything else, Pat?
Nope, that's it.
Very good, thank you. I just want to remind all the chairs of committees that, if you recall, I've instituted reporting by committees twice a month to give you the opportunity to report sooner than later on information. Also a reminder that when you encounter any new topics, would like you to bring them in front of the commissioners for their awareness and opportunity to comment before they get on your agenda. Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to the next item of business, which is the first item of old business. Discuss a proposed ordinance to amend certain sections of the code establishing Grove Park parking lot as a 12-hour meter zone, including considering parking meter fee exemptions for various nonprofit organizations. We do have one or two letters from Wynn Achenbaum that refer to the parking there, and I'd like to get to those, but let's turn it over to Commissioner Gossett. You're the main sponsor of this. Would you like to introduce it?
Certainly, I think
Codified form?
I think basically we're familiar with the concept of looking for additional revenue sources for the city. And I think this is an opportunity for us to do that. At the discussion of last time, between now and then, I've talked to Carol Everhart with regards to the Visitor Center, and Dan Slagle with Main Street, and also Nancy Alexander with the Historical Society Museum, and all are aware of it and seem to be no issues with it. We've talked about staff parking or parking for visitors and what have you, and with the use of either dashboard passes or reserving signs specific for spots. I think it can all be worked out. David Mann, who is the current president of the Historical Society, said that he's going to bring this up with his board meeting, and that's late this afternoon. So I haven't heard anything back from him specifically on this, but Nancy seems to understand the process and basically following exactly what they're doing now with regards to they use pylons to block parking spaces for visitors, and that will continue. Also talking with Evan Miller, doing a site inspection out of locating the meter specifically around the entrance off of Rehoboth Avenue, so people be aware that it is a metered lot coming into it. And I think the only other change that I would suggest at this point in time is within the context of the code itself, with regards to looking at other codes or code portions that we're going to discuss later, specifically the farmers market, is that I don't want to be too restrictive, but on line 30, I believe it is, we talk about parking meters shall be not be operational until 3 p.m. That time frame, I think, again, reading the farmers market ordinance that we'll discuss later today, the 3 p.m. may be a little restrictive because the hours of the farmers market, the way the code currently reads, that can be established from year to year. So I have some suggested change to the language there, just a simple insertion of removing the 3 p.m. and stating 2 hours after the close of any day of the farmers market. So it's, again, there's not conflicting information between two sections of our code. I haven't discussed that with our solicitor, but I think that language would be acceptable, again, to be not as limiting as we have been in other areas of the code. So those are the major points of discussion that were left open from last time. And I'm open to any other questions or from the solicitor or Evan, if he has any comments about the site inspection.
Sure. First, I want to remind ourselves that I'll be calling on the public to speak on this at the end of the commissioners' conversation. I will also give them the opportunity to speak about anything about bicycles. I apologize for not calling on them at the end of that topic. I have two things, Patrick. One is on lines, let's say 32 to 34. It indicates that the accepting spaces designated for use by the Rehoboth Beach Museum, Chamber of Commerce Visitor Center, and Main Street. It does not articulate the number of parking spaces for each unit. I'm wondering what your thought is on how to define how many parking spaces they get. Is that just something that we should codify? Is it something that going to be left into the city manager's hands? So that's number one. And then after that, I'd like to talk about the time limitations on the parking meter. So let's go to articulating the number of parking spaces.
Well, as I had talked about earlier, in the financial aspect of it, I was working with 6 spaces. But in further discussions with Carol Everhart and Dan and Nancy, there are fluctuating needs. So I think the use of specific dashboard passes during the timeframes, because of, again, museum may have special openings of exhibits, something of that nature, where they will utilize the entire parking lot for an evening event, which we want to, encourage people to come and participate in museum expositions and opening events and what have you. The board of Main Street also meets on a frequent basis, that they would also park there. The only real specific designation would be 2 spaces for the visitor center during the open hours, so that people can come in, park, and go into the visitor center to gain information about Rehoboth and Rehoboth Beach and operations of the city, what have you. So again, it's more use of not limiting the aspects of X number of spaces, except the 2 for the visitor center, and use the aspect of dashboard passes that would be issued by those 3 organizations for the fluctuating needs that they have. Again, a board meeting for Main Street maybe once a quarter, similar to the Main Street, or rather the Historical Society, etc. So I think that if we were to specifically limit within the code, that would be more problematic than allowing either the city manager or issuing X number of dashboard passes to those 3 organizations for their use.
All right, thank you. Sharon, have you given any thought to how to manage this dashboard permit system?
Well, I think at this point, we're still discussing and trying to figure out the best way to, manage it. I don't know, Evan, if you have anything else.
No, I mean, I think it'll sort of be a learning process as we, institute metered parking there. 2 comments I wanted to make. So the first was, one of the requests of the commissioners was to go back and discuss this proposal with the parking department, which I had done. Commissioner Gossett and I, as you indicated, we went out and took a look at the site, and initially thought that locating the meter at the entrance of the lot was probably the best idea. In talking with June and Frank over at the parking department, their concerns were for people who are pulling into the lot, seeing the meter in addition to our signage, and stopping and reading the signage or getting out and paying the meter. So to reduce some of the congestion, their recommendation was to move it to the east side of the building, and then on the western side, just basically install a sign that says that it's a metered parking lot. And then, in terms of enforcement, we're still gonna need to figure out how best to do that. Certainly, we have the capability with LPR, but on certain days, when, you know, we get some rain, Rehoboth Avenue back up all the way down here to City Hall. So it could be difficult to get out there and enforce. So we'll probably use, some walking enforcement for that area. At that point, I think we could certainly keep our eyes out for some permits that are displayed from the various organizations. So still thinking about that, but certainly something that we'll have in place and figure out how best to enforce out there.
Thank you, Evan. And I do believe that once we get this underway, we'll have to probably tweak it with the chamber and Main Street offices. You know, we'll look at it and take an approach that, you know, is helpful to both of them.
Thank you. Then I wanted to get to my second question, and then we'll go to Commissioner Legree and Commissioner Chernowski. The second question was delving into Wynn Achenbaum's letter and the mention of 12-hour parking versus which promotes long-term parking versus 3 or 4 hour limitations on there to promote turnover. I tend to favor the second, but let's turn to Evan real quick to see are there any problems with 3 to 4 hour time limits versus a 12-hour time limit?
No, Mayor, I don't foresee any issues with that. Certainly we can have that done with Park Mobile, and then in terms of the meter, it's just configuring a particular type of rate setting. We have the capability to enforce what they call overtime parking as well, so we would just put a 3-hour restriction on that. So I don't foresee any issues with that.
All right, so I'll share my opinions later, but let's go to the commissioners. Commissioner Legree?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm thinking that the canal dock is going to get popular, and that's going to be more usage. And as I read Wynn Alkenbach's letter, I tend to agree with you, Mayor. And I'm glad we're having the discussion. I'm glad that the folks can hear it. And today we're going to have a board meeting for the Historical Society, and Nancy will probably write you in the next day or two a summary of their thoughts. So I'm glad we're having this discussion. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Chernowski?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to, I'm glad to hear Commissioner Gossett's thoughts about being more flexible with the hanging passes based on needs with those 3 organizations. I'm certainly in favor of that. When it comes to the timing of that lot, I'm a little conflicted because I think that turnover is important, and a 3 or 4 hour time limit is probably appropriate. But I go back and think last year when we went to 12 hours across the entire town, and the reason for that is because the business community overwhelmingly thought that 3 to 4 hours wasn't long enough, and it was pretty overwhelming, the support of that. So just throwing that out there as a reminder. I think consistency across the city can be important too. But just throwing that out there. That's all.
Commissioner Calusi?
Yes, thank you. I think the hang tag program is a good idea for those organizations, the museum. It simplifies things, I would imagine, in terms of, instead of looking at the number of spaces, that perhaps that makes more sense. But we don't want it to also be abused. I mean, we clearly want to make sure that there's an event that they're having where they would use those. As for the turnover, I understand where Commissioner Chernowski is coming from as far as having 12 hours across the city. I get that. However, the museum parking or that parking lot at Grove Park is really, I would think that that's not an area that businesses would be that concerned about. It's really for the park. So I find that to be different. It's not street parking, it's, the lot parking, and the lot parking is away, if you will, from the businesses. And I think it would make more sense to have turnover. We don't want people, leaving their cars there for, a very long time. So that's my input. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Byrne?
Thanks, Mayor. I continue to be very supportive of this concept. I thank Commissioner Gossett for all of his good work on this. I think that we should think seriously about the timing on these meters. I don't think that it's critical that we're consistent all across the city. Many communities, small and large, have a variety of time slots in different areas depending on what the purpose and the need of parking there is. And I think on the west end and in the park, having 3-hour meters could make very good sense for the various uses of the park. So I would really, at this point, favor us taking a look at 3 or 4 hour opportunities and not billing it the same as our street parking. I don't think that we really want folks that are going to park there and then hike down to the beach for a long, long day, but rather are going to use the amenities of the park and the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, thank you. I just want to say I appreciate Ms. Achenbaum's concerns and also her suggestions. And I agree that many of them are very strong concerns that we should look at with regards to parking and use and what have you, specifically when it comes to her comments about clear space and their needs and safety walking across the circle area and what have you. But I don't know that any of the aspects that she brings forward, other than the timing, could be addressed, have any impact by metering the lot. With regards to the timing, whether it be 2, 3, 4 hours or a segment there, I see no problem with doing that. But I look back to then enforcement aspect of it, and I talked to question Mr. Miller about regards to enforcement. The old phrasing of chalking the tires, or what does prevent someone from parking there for the 3-hour limit and then just going back and pumping $3 more worth of quarters in, or updating on Park Mobile or what have you. So if the intention is turnover, do we have the enforcement aspects or abilities in place to make that turnover happen? And I don't know if Evan can address that, or the chief, or just thoughts along those lines.
Evan, go ahead.
Commissioner, this is Evan. We do have those capabilities. So in Park Mobile, essentially when we set it up as a 3-hour zone, they have what they call a cooling off period, which would prohibit anybody from purchasing additional time for, I believe it's a half hour or so, in order to get them to move. And then for the meters, we have the ability to just prohibit anybody from purchasing additional time beyond the 3 hours. So strictly just setting up those functions.
Thank you, Evan. For me, this Grove parking lot is a specialty parking lot. There's a uniqueness to the location. We've already talked about providing parking spaces dedicated for visitors to the Chamber of Commerce Visitor Center, to the museum, to Main Street. But we really haven't addressed parking for visitors to the parks. And I think that whatever the parking is, it ought to be able to promote visitation to these areas. And to do that, I believe that we need to have turnover at the parks rather than 12 hours. So I would support a 3 or 4 hour term. I do not believe that parking lot is intended for, nor should it be used for long-term parking for businesses or otherwise. But the short-term parking, I would agree with. So we need to come to a consensus on where to go with this. We can certainly leave this in there and then have a second version 3 or 4 hour parking, to put on, the regular meeting and agenda. I think we could actually, Glenn, probably even vote on this at the regular March meeting, because we have one proposal in front of us and we have a less restrictive proposal in front of us if we go with 3 to 4 hours. Would you feel comfortable with that, Glenn?
Yeah, I would. And remember, this is not a zoning change. There's no public hearing required. Did I hear from Commissioner Gossett, though, that we're going to go from limiting it to 3 p.m. to 2 hours after the close of the farmer's market, any day that the farmer's market is operational? Is that kind of the consensus?
I hear no objections, so I would say that would be acceptable.
Okay. Sure, I can have this ready for the regular meeting this month.
Okay, so we need to come up with the 3 or the 4 hour limitation to put in there. Commissioner Caluzzi? You're muted.
Yes, I think that the 3 hours is plenty of time. I think 4 hours is actually just too much, and I would vote for 3 hours.
Now, hearing no objection, Glenn, put 3 hours in there if you would. So we'll have the 2 proposals in front of us. That way we don't have to make a decision today, and we'll make a decision during the regular voting meeting in March. Thank you very much. Any other comment? I would like to go to the members of the public. Now that we've made a decision and haven't consulted them, my apologies again. Let's go to the public to talk about this, and also give the members of the public the opportunity to talk about anything about bicycles that was talked about in the previous agenda topic. Steve and Sandy Curson, do you want to say anything here? Sandy or Steve?
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing to say at this point about the parking.
All right, thank you, Sandy. Carol Everhart, Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You know, there's been 3 leases with that piece of property there with the visitor center through the Chamber of Commerce in the city, and they've all stated, they started in '88, then we put it up in the air while you did streetscape, we put it back, they built 509, and so we've had a lease in '88, 2004, and 2017. In 2017, we combined that lease with where we are now at 306. All of them, every single one of them has said that we mutually understood and agreed that there was going to be shared parking on that lot. I think the concern to really think about is how many spaces for the visitor, because I've never been to a visitor center where I paid a meter. So as long as there's 2 spaces there for staff, and there's, I would say 3 to 4 spaces there where the visitor would not have to pay. And that can go from different months, during the winter months, from November to April, you don't need as much. So we could alter that somewhat. And I think the 3 hours really works there because it's an active lot. It's not a lot where they're, nor do I think we want to encourage someone parking there and staying all day. I don't see any reason why the passes wouldn't work through the visitor center. We could certainly arrange to do that. So all in all, I just don't see a real issue with this. I think there's some details to work out, but I don't see a real issue.
Thank you, Carol. Anything on bicycles?
No, I'm going to reserve on that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Walter Brittingham.
Good morning. I agree with Mayor Mills about a shorter term, 3 or 4 hours, if you're going to do this. This whole thing should not be about dollars. I'm going to jump around, but I believe there's still a no contact order from the police department that the police department's not supposed to get involved in something unless it's CPR or gunshots or something to that extent. And they teleserve just about everything in most cases other than severe speeding or something like that. So you're not going to have any enforcement from the police department. I don't know that the parking meter division, you're already buying more stuff for them, and I don't care about that. I appreciate Mr. Gossett's comments. We have not less than 8 users of that lot. We have yet to have the upcoming usage for the dock. I don't think it'll be that great. We have the privileged tenant being the museum, part of the city when they want to be and not when they don't want to be. We have Main Street that's privileged because they have rent supplements. They're not going to say anything bad about it. Nobody's mentioned the Tot Lot Playground, whatever you want to call it. When we go to pavilions, I don't know, the city manager and Evan are going to have to add in there, are they rented, and are there prohibitions about parking inside to carry your picnic items into the pavilions? Have reserve situations on the pavilions. You can't have that on farmers market day. God help you do anything there. But is there any special provisions for the pavilions? Because you go there, most people are not going to drive up on their car to carry their picnic. Have the restrooms, I believe state of Delaware DNREC subsidizes the restrooms. You have the farmers market, and then you have the visitor center. We haven't even talked about bike sharing, which a lot of you want to do. And God help if, after people in the paper suggesting moving clear space, and I never know what you would all do there. And then a comment came from a creditable person, the people that from the Egg that park there. And then you have employees from outside of the park area that park there and sit all day. And I think you got too much on your plate to be dealing with this time of year, and I don't know why you're messing with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Marty Johnson?
No, Mr. Mayor, at this time, I have nothing on parking.
Thank you. Lenore Brady?
At this time, I have nothing on parking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, that's the public. Is there any more comment by the commissioners? If not, we've got our path forward charted, and we'll take it up again at the next meeting with a vote with 2 versions of the code. Thank you very much. With that, the next item of business is discuss a proposed ordinance to amend City of Rehoboth Beach Municipal Code by requiring applications to be filed in digital formats for different applications that are articulated in the agenda. I'd like to remind everybody, this was introduced earlier, that I mentioned that right now, the only permit requiring digital accompaniment by hard copy is the permit of compliance to serve alcohol by a restaurant. The goal of this is, my goal of this is to expand this, greater transparency, easier on the staff by requiring the applicants to submit a digital format in addition to hard copy, so that we can very easily transfer those to embedment in agendas. Right now, if the city staff has time, they have to scan them, which includes scanning of, say, 2 foot by 3 foot, or what are they, 24 by 30 inch blueprints. And so certainly it would be much, much easier to put this on the applicant to do that. Multiple code sections are included in here. Right now, again, the only code requirement is within the restaurant code that requires digital copies of applications when doing a permit of compliance. So this code goes to multiple sections: special events permit, expressive activity permit, subdivision application, partitioning application, minor subdivision application, major subdivision application, site plan review application, comprehensive tree regulations, administrative appeals, administrative variance, board of adjustment application, and building permits. These are all cited in the proposal in front of you. So some of you might be questioning why in the whereas clause it mentions holding a public hearing and the zoning issues. That is because, if you notice at the top, some of the codes indicated are in the chapter 270, which is a zoning code. And something even as simple as adding digital formatting requirement to the zoning code requires a public hearing. So that's why that's in there. I will run this by the Building and Licensing, Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment, Parks and Shade Tree Committee for their input, but I wanted to get your input first and see if this is the right way to go. I certainly hope it is. And if so, then the timing would be to adopt the resolution to go to a public hearing at the March regular meeting, if you're amenable, and then we can conduct a public hearing and vote on accepting everything else at that same time. There's no absolute rush on this. With that, I go to Commissioner comments. Commissioner Sernowski.
I'd just like to say that I'm in complete favor, and I think it's probably long overdue to go this way.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Legree.
How many of these are already being submitted in digital format without requirements? I'm trying to put a finger on how much we're requiring people to jump through hoops that they may already be doing anyway. All I can think of offhand are the scanning of the plots and the drawings, but would building and licensing tell us that this is going to be a major drag on people filing applications, or would building and licensing say they're already probably doing most of it already? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, right now, let me give you an example. The application submittals for the Wilmington-Baltimore Streetscape Task Force are all done electronically. I can't imagine that there's any problem with them scanning them themselves and sending them in, submitting them electronically. I have heard of no problems with the permit to compliance. Again, that's a requirement by restaurants to submit those electronically in addition to hard copy. And I don't recall ever hearing any complaints. Ann, are you on there? Have you heard of any complaints about anybody submitting anything electronically? Ann may or may not be available. Sharon, can you comment?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Ann.
I have no complaints that have come in by anybody that has had to submit for permitted compliance. They've been amenable to actually doing that for us along with the hard copies. I don't think that it's going to be a problem with the Board of Adjustment or Parks and Shade Tree or Planning Commission, because these are situations where, since we are in the COVID mode, that it would be very helpful to be able to put all of this information on digitally.
Mayor, I would agree with Ann, and also it is a long time coming, and most entities who do submit information either have run into situations where other municipalities have required this, and it is long overdue for the city to be efficient. So I don't believe there'll be any objection. Commissioner would agree.
Thank you, Ann, and thank you, Sharon. I want to remind everybody also that all the drawings, these blueprints that are done, they're all done electronically by CAD or whatever. And it literally is pushing a button that converts that drawing to a PDF that then is submitted to the city. Not any different than us taking a Word document and saving it as a PDF. It's very easy. So, Commissioner Legree, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that sure does. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, thank you. I certainly wholeheartedly support this action of going to digital formatting. Just a couple of comments. If we could make sure that somewhere in policies and procedures that the digital format acceptable to the city is outlined so that the applicant knows what is expected of them with regards to the DPI or the density or just the specifics of what the city will accept. And I know that can change as the electronics or the programs change, but if that can be somewhere that can be found easily by the applicant. And I don't know whether to get too deep into this or not, but if we are looking at these, just to if you've asked for comments back from the Parks and Shades and Planning Commission and what have you, specifically under line 134 there, an application for approval of major subdivisions. Is 28 days still the appropriate time for an application? Should that be made greater? Should it be lessened? Just a check with city secretary and also the planning commission to see if that time frame should be adjusted. And also then on line 215, we talk about abutting land within 50 feet of the properties. I know that there have
I'm
been
sorry, your line number again?
215, sorry.
215, okay.
Correct. And just again, to verify that 50 feet is still an acceptable dimension. I know there've been comments in previous applications and discussions that neighbors didn't feel that they were informed enough or what have you. But again, just to, if we're looking at this, just ask that question again of the planning commission and or the city secretary to feel if that is an appropriate distance. So we can be consistent throughout the code and that type of thing. And I know we are also going to address this at some point in the future. It's been on our list for a while, but on line 184, we also talked about an application fee of $100. Would this be in a time to again have a discussion about that, or wait until grouping fees and in a future discussion, which I know is coming up sometime? But if we're addressing these, I just think to kind of take a holistic look and ask those boards and commissions to verify that, these numbers and distances and days of admission are all still appropriate.
Thank you, Commissioner. As far as administrative variances, will be a future agenda topic, so we'll take that up at that time. In terms of when I reach out to all these other agencies, as I mentioned I would do, I'll mention your two notes there about the different lines there for them to verify things, and I'll check with Ann also and ask for her input. As far as we have I don't know if you can see that or not, but we have a digital document submission policy that we can have Ann and Building and Licensing look at also to see if that needs any updating. But I think that might well take care of it. Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I do agree with the others. This is long overdue. It also ties into my wish and that once we even merge back to live meetings, that maybe we don't even have to have as much printed out as we used to, because as I think I said at a previous meeting, I've been relying on digital materials for a while, and I think it's a good habit to get into overall. But I have a couple of other, detailed questions, somewhat along the lines of some of the things Commissioner Gossett just brought up, and that is that some of the items on here do trigger a notice periods, like with the Board of Adjustment or whatever. And I guess what I'm wondering is, does the receipt of the digital application trigger that time frame as opposed to the receipt of the paper form? And do we need to make, or does it matter? Do we need to make it clear if they don't come in at the same time? What triggers the notice period? Is that a question for Glenn?
Glenn, do you want to answer now, or do you want time to think about that?
Well, my initial response, Mayor and Commissioner Gay, would be that the application isn't perfected until all the requirements are in. So since it requires both digital and paper, I would say the timeline doesn't start until both those components are into the city.
Okay. And I just think we need to note that on any instructions so that people can be aware that the clock doesn't tick until they get the paper form in. And I'm also wondering, except for the one on the building permit where it talks about the plot plan, I think all the others refer to application. So I'm wondering if that is intentional, if it's just the application. I've heard, the mayor mention the drawings that come in. Or is it meant to be all documents associated with the application, all attachments, all the record, in other words, for that supports an application, as well as the application itself?
That's my understanding.
Go ahead. It's all. So any hard copy that's sent in has to have an electronic version of it. So that would mean all.
Okay, and I think that probably needs to be made clear too. So that it's not just the application, it's all supporting documentation that goes with the application. Right, okay. I think that was all I had. Oh, I guess I just wondered, are there any others? Do we know we've been comprehensive about this and we've addressed all kinds of applications that would be coming in this way? We're not missing anything?
Well, that's why this is introduced before. That's why we have it now, for you all to look at it. And then we've got the extra eyes of the Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment, and the other agencies as noted. Hopefully we'll capture them all. And if not, then we've got an excellent start, I believe.
It's great. Thanks.
But again, I think the goal would be to be able to adopt a resolution to go to public hearing. And then even though some of these are not in the zoning code, I think we can talk about them all at the same time and pass them all, vote them all at the same time. Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, and I will clarify this later, but just in a thought process, I know some of the applications, specifically with Planning Commission, which I'm familiar with, requires 9 copies of documents. That's in the application itself. Will we adjust the applications to reflect one hard copy, or, and again, don't have to answer this now, but just one hard copy and then digital for distribution, or just a thought process of how to address that concept?
Okay, well, we won't address that now, but we'll talk with Ann and Glenn and get a response to you for the next meeting.
That's great.
Very good. Thank you very much. If there's no more commissioner comment, we'll go to the members of the public again. Sandy and Steve, do you have anything to say?
On that matter, no.
Carol Everhart?
No problem with electronically submitting special event applications at all. No problem.
Thank you. Walter Brittingham? Walter, we'll come back to you if you're there. Marty Johnson?
No, I have nothing now, thank you.
Lenore Brady?
No, I have no comment on this. Thank you.
Walter, are you back?
No comment.
Go ahead. No, all right, thank you. We'll move on to the next item of business. Thank you very much. We have a path forward on this one. The next is first item of new business, discussion of a draft agreement between City of Rehoboth Beach and Oyster House Village, a new proposed land development plan in Sussex County for the city to provide water service to the project. A note to Kevin and Sharon, the support document may have different line numbering than what you have, so I don't know if you printed it out or not, but be aware.
Okay.
So I'll turn it over to you all.
Thank you, Mayor. Kevin has an explanation for this, and putting it up here shortly.
Would you mind explaining exactly where this development is to start off with, and then do your thing?
Thank you, Mayor. So there is the location. It's just across the canal. That's the Route 1 bridge there. You can see kind of in the circle area. It's going to be a development of 30 single-family homes and a pool/clubhouse facility. You can see this is the plot. If you can see my cursor that I showed you on the earlier one, that's our existing water distribution system. So it certainly will be an easy tie-in for us and makes the most sense. There's you have a copy of the draft agreement in your packet, and I guess the intent would be to ask any questions you have at this point, but ultimately to vote on authorizing us to enter in an agreement with the developer at the next voting meeting.
Sharon, anything you want to add, or you're all right?
We're good with what's proposed, and this isn't the first time, so we're happy to do this.
So obviously this is within our water district. It's separate from Sussex County, has nothing to do with Sussex County government. Just a reminder that the water rates are different inside the city incorporated limits and outside the city limits. So this is a project that's outside of the city limits and would pay what ends up being a little higher rate. Right. All right. Any commissioner questions? Commissioner Calusi?
Thank you. Yes, should there be any impact fee associated with this?
Yeah, the agreement sets out that they'll get every impact fee that we already charge to anybody using our system. So a new house, there'd be an impact fee, meter fees, all the same charges that any of our other customers get, they will also get, in addition to, you know, them providing the system, all the costs associated with providing the system itself.
Okay, that is my main question. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, good morning. Thank you. I just specifically looking at the description, the tax parcel ID number, and we refer to it as in here OHVDE LLC, and there may have been a change, but currently that tax ID number is listed to Oyster House Homes LLC. So just for consistency that we can tie it back to the specific way it is listed at the deed with Sussex County, I would appreciate a check on that. And also, I'm just curious, lines 198, 99, transfer of ownership of the city improvements and easement to the city. Could you help me understand how that, I assume this is a development that would have a homeowners association that initially is owned by the developer and then transferred after a certain percentage of the development is sold to a homeowners association. Are we at all to be concerned about that, or how is that transfer handled?
So I don't think that turnover process that normally happens with a developer, excuse me, is applicable to what's going on here. These improvements will be made by the city. There will be no turnover. I mean, there'll be city improvements, so they won't turn over at the time that the HOA turns over to the homeowners. They will already be city assets prior to that process.
All right. Okay. And the impact fees, again, at Commissioner Calusi mentioned on line 171 there. Do you remind me of what our current impact fee schedule is?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. We'd have to ask Gene what those costs are.
I can get that for you.
Sure.
Okay. That's the only
But
question.
the impact fees are consistent with everybody else.
Correct. That's correct.
Anything else, Commissioner Gossett?
Not at this time.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Byrne?
Yes, just to clarify for those that are listening and haven't made time to look at this lengthy document, there will be no cost to the city of Rehoboth Beach for doing this, correct, Kevin?
That's correct. Any cost that we have to expend, whether it's in the plan reviews or inspections, we require them to set up kind of an escrow account that we would draw off of, and then they would replenish if we get to a point where we exceed that initial amount. But we'll be reimbursed for any costs associated with our reviews, and then the cost of the construction is wholly on the developer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Calusi?
Yes, Kevin, do we have a general time frame for this? Have they given you any timing of when this may commence?
They have not, Commissioner. The folks at the Development Corporation, apparently this was proposed several years ago, and then the developer either sold the rights or changed names or something. But anyway, it's a different developer that came in, adopted their previous plans, tweaked them slightly, and then has just resubmitted. So that's kind of, other than saying, hey, we really want to move quickly on this, I didn't get a time frame for when they want to start construction.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we've confirmed that this is in our water district, but tell us about wastewater. This is something we're not handling for them.
Correct. They'll go to the county for the wastewater, which ultimately may come to us, but they are not part of our collection system.
Very good. Thank you. Is
Sorry,
there
one
any
other
more?
question. How
Yeah,
many,
yes.
how many additional users will this add to the system?
It was 30 homes and then a community building. I don't know if they'll have a separate account for that, but 30 single-family units.
Thank you.
For any of you that are older like I am, you might remember, I believe this property was the old city landfill or compost heap. And so it's seeing a revitalization with homes on it. Commissioner LeGree? You're muted.
We never had a contract with anybody for this property before. Is that correct? This is new.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, and not with any of the former owners or anything. Okay. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. We'll go to the members of the public. Sandy and Steve Curson, anything?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Carol Everhart?
No comment.
Thank you. Walter Brittingham?
Pass.
Thank you. Marty Johnson?
No, nothing, thank you.
Lenore Brady?
No comment, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, folks. We'll put this on our regular meeting in March for consideration or vote. Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to the next item of new business, which is discuss nomination to fill a vacant seat on the Planning Commission. Joyce Lazier submitted her resignation. I believe she served 5 or 6 years on the Planning Commission. She did a good job, but it was her time to submit a resignation. And for replacement is by nomination of the mayor with agreement by the city commissioners. I am nominating for the vacant seat to be filled for the remainder of Joyce's term, Mr. Jim Ellison. He's a full-timer in town. He's a retired architect that worked on the Capitol of the U.S. building. He's submitted an application which we will embed in the next agenda. But he served the city well for many, many years. He was on the Architectural Review Board Task Force when it was formed, goodness, how many years ago, Patrick? 18 years ago, maybe. Yeah. And he served on other committees. Currently, he is board of the Rehoboth Art League, was its chair a few years ago. Recently appointed the chair of the Delaware State Review Board for Historic Preservation, and currently chairs that group. I did run this application by Jeffrey Trunzo, who is the chair of the Planning Commission, and he was very favorable in response to having an architect and somebody with Jim's background being nominated for the Planning Commission. Are there any questions? If not, then we will put this on for a vote at our regular meeting. Again, we've got members of the public. Steve and Sandy Curson.
No comment, thank you.
Carol Everhart. Carol maybe stepped off. Walter Brittingham.
No comment, thank you.
Marty Johnson.
No comment, thanks.
Lenore Brady.
No comment, thank you.
Thank you. Trying to keep you all on your toes. We appreciate your participation. With that, we'll go to the next item of business, which is to discuss a request by the farmers market to increase the number of vendors allowed currently by city code from 25 vendors to 38 vendors, and including an overall review of Chapter 148 Farmers Market. A letter is embedded in the agenda, I believe. Dated January 29th from Sandy Curson, President of the Board of Directors for the Farmers Market, mentioning the market was established in 2006. You can read more about her request in the embedded in the agenda. Farmers market started with 14 vendors 16 years ago. And as a result of this growth, Board of Directors is making a formal request to increase the allowed number of vendors at the farmers market from 28 to 38. What I'd like to do is
If I may,
go through the code. I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Yes. Pat's recusing herself from this conversation, so it's up to the rest of us. In front of you, embedded as a support document in the agenda, is a document that I created. The comments in the margins are from SM, which is Stan Mills. Also wanted to take this opportunity while we're reviewing the number of vendors to take this opportunity to review the entire code. I'm not intending for us to address whether or not it's in the best location. We can address that at the pleasure of the commissioners some other time, if desired. But let's go in order, if you don't mind, and what's in front of us on the support document, and talk about the comments I identified in the margins. If you do have comments on other than my highlights, please speak up so that we can just do this in sequence, fairly organized methodology, and get through this reasonably quickly. I would like to remember that we received a couple correspondence, I think one from Wynn Achenbach and one from Jeffrey Good on this topic. With that, let's just go through this document. The first thing I noted, and again, some of these things are not in the request for vendor numbers, but things that I thought I wanted to highlight for us to have the opportunity to discuss. If you have more to discuss, then that's fine too. But if we start at line 32, 33, the farmers market period of operation is from May 1 to October 31 of any year. You notice in the margin, I make note that they have a holiday market. Sandy, is that typically in a particular time of year, late November, early December?
It's usually the weekend of Thanksgiving, the Saturday after.
Okay, thank you. So I think we ought to note it in there that besides this window of opportunity, that they also can have one more. The wording can be fixed up however we want. Any comments on that particular item by the commissioners? If not, we'll move to the next one. I don't have anything identified on the next page. My next comment is the number of vendors, line numbers 99 through 101. The number of vendors, it says on all days that the farmers market is operated, there shall be a minimum of 5 vendors and a maximum of 25 vendors present. I understand that their request is for 38. I also understand apparently that they've exceeded that number 25 for many, many years. And so those that are complaining, if you will, or making mention of additional parking and what will happen if we increase the number of vendors, it's already done, it's already there. So just be aware. Sandy, can you give us an idea of what is your maximum? I've heard 40 some was your maximum.
Yes, 40 is the maximum.
About 40, okay. So anyhow, we don't need to get into the details, I don't believe, but we do know that they've exceeded 25 for some period of time, and the question in front of us is increasing to 38. And I would maybe we'll entertain comments on each of these as we go so we don't have to backtrack. My comment is, my biggest comment, I guess, comes later when it talks about parking, and that I'm very concerned about parking and parking within the park, and that the increased number beyond 25 allows for, if we go with 38, up to 13 additional vehicles in the park. So when we get to that, I guess I'll reiterate my concern, which is, do they really need to have every vendor park in the park? So with this, open it for discussion just on lines 99 to 101 in terms of the number of vendors. Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, good morning. I look at this, I'm, it's been operating since 2006, and I'm, not to look back too much, but I don't know how long they've been operating at 40 vendors, which is, not in compliance with the code. So I think that, in looking at this, that we really need to just look forward and take a look at how we can make what's actually happening code compliant. And there are other areas that we can address later. But if we've been operating at 38 and we've been handling the traffic or handling the parking and the aspect of roots of the trees and parking and what have you, those are all issues to look at a little harder. But I think if 38 or 40 is what they've been working at, we should look at that as it's been happening. So I kind of look at this as that we're looking at forgiveness and not permission in the sense of going forward. And all of our codes need to be revised and as they evolve and come forward, and it's up to us to also take a look at the effects on the community, both the positive and the negative. So I think that to look at the 38 or 40 vendors that have been operating and also extend as part of the code a one special season market in the holiday period for the Saturday after Thanksgiving, which is what has been customary for the past 5 or 10 years at least, which again was not outlined in the code. We have other aspects in there of applications and annual reports and those types of things. So I think there are quite a few areas that we need to review in the code to match exactly what is happening and perhaps question and make sure that that is what we want to happen. But again, I think that
I can't say it now.
the joint or the expansion, if you will, to officially recognize 38 vendors is what's been happening, and that probably needs to go forward. And other aspects also, I know you want to just stick to those lines, but just defining a vendor and what type of products are sold. And we refer to the code again about fresh produce and food products. Well, I know because I'm a frequent shopper at the farmer's market, but at times there's jewelry sold, there's other things, there's a gentleman with wool and lambs and sheeps and that type of thing. So again, I think we need to just investigate how we really define what is to be sold there and look at the guidelines that have been established by the state of Delaware Department of Agriculture. They have some very specific guidelines about farmers markets and defining. I mean, when we wrote this back in 2006, we were really pioneers and kind of setting out what we thought would happen. So I think it's a good opportunity to take a look back as to what has occurred and how we can best help to promote the farmers market into actually what they are doing. And again, I think it comes back to really asking, forgiveness as opposed to permission. So I support, I think, when a holistic look at the whole code.
Thank you, Commissioner. As far as refining what they do now in terms of vendors and what is in the code, I think we may be too late for this upcoming summer season, but it's certainly something that if you wanted to take the charge on and bring up in the future, that would be acceptable. Commissioner Gay?
First of all, I think Commissioner Gossett just raised a number of very valid issues, and I think it would be really great to look at the entire code. If we haven't visited it since it was created in 2007, this is a good time to make sure it adequately meets the needs today. But I'm trying to figure out, I know that on the website, I know the request is for 38. I think on their website, they may have 38 vendors listed. I understand that we're looking at a situation where they're already doing this, but I want to understand something Sandy Curzon said a minute ago. She said they can accommodate up to 40. So one question is, so why then 38? Why don't we make it 40? But my real question is, 40 can fit in the current footprint? Because if that's the case, that's a whole different message than expanding the scope of the farmers market, which is what I thought some of this was about. So I feel a lot better about it if what we're doing is cleaning up the code and, as we say, giving forgiveness and not permission, but we're not really expanding the footprint. So that's my question.
Thank you. Well, this is the opportunity to bring up anything in the code. I mean, if enough want to review the parameters of hiring vendors, per Commissioner Gossett, then that's certainly our purview.
Again,
So we need to come, go ahead, Commissioner Gossett.
I just, there are aspects of the use of the pavilions, the cleanliness and storage. I think we addressed no equipment or other materials shall be stored in the park or left in the park overnight unless previously authorized by the city manager. There are sheds where they store the tents and all that. And again, I think that's what's been happening. So if that written permission has been granted by the city manager, that's great. There's an application process that should take place every year. I'm assuming that has taken place. The way it reads that it's open for bidding, if you will, or the best qualified candidates. I don't know that anybody else has ever applied to run the farmers market. I think it works very well and produces what the city wants to. But again, just getting the code in compliance with what is actually happening, I think is important. I also think that, again, this was 2006 when we wrote it, the application fee of $100, we really need to consider.
Well, we're coming up on that. That's a talk topic.
Okay. The demonstrations and entertainment, again, we have codes with regards to amplification and those types of things. So again, just looking at these aspects of how to match what's really going on and if we're in conflict of other parts of our code within the city.
Thank you, Commissioner. Again, what I would like to do is resolve soon the number of vendors. All these other things can certainly, we can address them. And if they're beyond that timeline for this year, we can put a date of implementation after this year's farmers market or something. But because I think it's all a good time to look at this. But Sandy, how far along are you all in hiring vendors for the upcoming season?
Well, first of all, I want to make the point that we don't always have 38 to 40 vendors. It's seasonal. For instance, the peaches don't start right away. We do have all the vendors already signed on for this year. I guess that would be 38.
And have you guaranteed them all spots? In other words, if we went to 35 vendors?
They've already put a deposit down. They had to pay a third or half. They had to pay half already.
Yeah, but if we came to less than 38, how do you deal with that?
Well, we have 28 that have paid so far.
So we're at a good time to be discussing this, should we decide to go fewer than 38.
Yes.
Thank you, Sandy. Commissioner Byrne?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. A number of good questions have been raised, and I think some of it is longer term discussion, probably after this season. But in terms of the numbers, I'm certainly in favor of this proposal to increase it and make it compliant with the current situation to 38 or 40. Can we confirm with Sandy Curson what Commissioner Gay brought up, that indeed the 38 fit into the current footprint?
Yes, 38 fits into the current footprint.
Yeah, okay, and I think, at least for me, that's really important, that we're not expanding the amount of parkland that is being dedicated to the farmers market. I mean, this is an immensely popular event for our residents and our visitors, and so I'm strongly supportive of doing what's being asked by the Farmers Market Board. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I would like Sandy to address one thing. If we go to 38 or anything above 25, how are you handling COVID situation? Does that not restrict the number of vendors because of the required social distancing and any other guidelines from the governor's office?
We do have to stick with Governor's office says, and last year there was a restriction, and I think we're waiting to hear what the new policy will be currently.
So even if we go above 25, you still need to adhere to the state guidelines. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Srnowski?
Yeah, I've just sticking to the numbers right now. I guess I'd like to go back to Commissioner Gay's comment on if you can actually accommodate 40, why aren't we doing 40 and doing 38 instead? So I am supportive of, as long as this is not a change or an expansion, I'm in favor of bringing them up to compliance with 38 or 40, but if they can actually fit 40, I'd rather just make the number 40 rather than a year from now go back through this process and go from 38 to 40. So I think I'd like some clarification from Sandy on that 38 versus 40 number.
It does fluctuate depending on what produce the farmers have at the time, so it's not consistently 40.
Thank you. Commissioner Gay?
Well, and I was basically going to say what Ed just said about, why not go to 40 if that's what it will accommodate. But I guess my question for Sandy is, are there times of the year when they're all there, when it actually is 38, I guess is your current max that you've ever had in that space?
Yes, there are times of the year where we have 38.
Okay, and you're saying there are spaces there within the current footprint to actually accommodate two more than that?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Commissioner Gossett?
Just again, along those lines, the past year with the COVID restrictions, has the market, because of distancing, has the market actually spread out over the parkland more than normal? Have you expanded and taken a bigger footprint within the park itself this year as opposed to past years because of social distancing requirements?
We had less vendors, so we were able to spread them out a little bit further.
So you have less vendors, but you used a larger footprint because of COVID restrictions. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then going forward, when you talk about 38 or 40, you also have your information tent and then an entertainment area and then the green tent or informational tent. Are those included in this 40 count, or are those over and above the 38 or 40 count?
Included in the 40.
Okay, so it's actually, if you have 40, then in my calculation, if you will, you've had 40, that's actually 37 vendors. One is the informational tent, one is your sales tent, and one is the entertainment position.
Inside a tent. Oh, it's a position.
Yes. Entertainment is not usually a tent.
Okay, but it occupies a space though, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if we talk about 40 spaces and you use those however appropriate, that would include your informational tent, your green tent, if you will, and the entertainment area. Is that understood?
Yes.
Okay. And that is actually what has been happening for the past how many years?
5 years, but we didn't have the information tent or the entertainment tent or the green tent last year because of COVID.
Because of COVID.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Legree?
Sandy, congratulations on our smashing success. It's just been great. If you had all the space you wanted and all the access you wanted, are there more vendors sitting out there? Would there be 58 who would, or maybe 68 who would want to come and sell produce? Or are you just about where you think you ought to be as opposed to where you could be?
I think we're where we should be. There's always people that want to join, but we don't want to have too much competition of people selling the same things. We do have a wait list.
Okay, so your customer base is about probably where you should be. However, yeah, you do have more suppliers if you had a better customer base or a bigger customer base.
I don't think the customer base changes.
Okay, that's good. Thank you a lot.
You're welcome.
Well, this farmer's market, started 16 years ago. I think it's done a fantastic job in growing. Maybe I'm the one outlier, but, they asked for 38, and that's what they have been doing for past years. I'm willing to go to 38. I am very, cautious about doing any more. I'm not receptive to going to above 38. I'm very protective of the park, and I think it can tend to get overcrowded. And as you'll see in the next topic, when we talk about parking, I have extreme concerns about continued parking, including the extra 13 vehicles that have been and will be put onto that land. With that, we need to come up with a number. It sounds like everybody, I don't know, I don't want to guess. I guess we'll put 40 on there. We can always come down to 38 during the next voting meeting if we choose to, but that way it'll accommodate what seems to be the majority here. With that, let's go ahead and since this is the main topic, let's go ahead and go to the public before we continue with this discussion. Steve and Sandy, do you have anything further you want to say? You want to wait for to react later?
I'll wait.
Thank you. Carol Everhart?
I will also wait.
Thank you, Carol. Walter Bringham?
Everybody's scared to death except me. Well, first of all, I understood that this past year there were some cases of less vendors, somewhat because of the COVID, and that there were some rules that were put in about backing up, and they were sent out by the, I guess, by the governor's mandates. However, I think we're hearing about good stewardship. We have truthfulness, depending what people want to hear, because they've admitted in the past they haven't complied and they know better. And I think it's ridiculous to take it, even if it's at 38 now for occupancy. I think if it's 25, it should be 25. I was in the park probably 4 or 5 times last year in the farmers market, and traffic enforcement is not. Parking enforcement is not. You must make a complaint. You have to practically get the chief or a lieutenant down there. They block the entrances. They have trucks and trailers and animals. And I don't care if it's 16 years. It used to be nice in the past, but it's not as nice as it used to be. I don't think it should require city intervention, and you're not going to get much from the city manager's office because this is licensed by the city. I'm interested in knowing if they have 28 paid and they pay $100 fee. What do they, maybe we can get told it's none of our business, but what does hiring vendors mean? And that's the end of my repertoire.
Thank you, Walter. Marty Johnson?
Yes, I have a couple points to make, mostly just iterating what Sandy said.
Would you please advise the commissioners who you are, what's your relationship to the city?
Yes, I've been a member of the board, the Rehoboth Beach Farmers Market Board since the inception, and I have been the past president of the board for 3 or 4 years.
Now we have perspective. Thank you. Go ahead, Marty.
Sure. First, I would like to, iterate that it's seasonal in terms of the number of vendors. So during July and August, there are most of the vendors there, but like the peaches and apples and so forth, those are all seasonal. The other thing is that most of these farmers, almost all of them are small farmers, and small farmers in Delaware rely on the farmers markets for their income. And so it's very crucial. And I get from the sense from the commissioners that there's not an issue with having the farmers market, that everyone is pretty much in favor of that. But it's just working out the details. And I think Commissioner Patrick is right in that the code be revised and added the holiday festival and some of the other things, and mentioning perhaps that it is food and food products I think that's in there, but yes, the wool was there. We consider that an agricultural product. I think that's pretty much, I think Sandy's letter really spoke to the importance of the market, to the city and to the vendors.
Thank you, Marty. Lenore Brady? Again, would you identify yourself so we know who we're conversing with?
Yes. Yes. Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Lenore Brady, and I own Stag Run Farm. We are in the west side of Georgetown, Delaware. And as Marty said to you, the farmers markets are the lifeline to us as small farmers. And when I say small farmers, I'm a 35-acre farm, and I'm also an apple orchard and specialty produce. The success of a farmers market is based on having variety and a mix of farmers and vendors. People come because they can find what they want. And it's very important that there's a good mix. Once again, I am on the board of the Rehoboth Farmers Market. I'm also on the board of 2 other markets in the region. So I'm very familiar with farmers markets, and we've also seen that farmers markets are, a great value, especially with COVID. Your community reached out unbelievably. When we thought we were going to go under, the farmers market's what kept our farms going. And Rehoboth is just so loyal to the farmers and the farmers markets. So, we're grateful for your residents and for your farmers market as a farmer here in Georgetown.
Thank you, Lenore. With that, there's no other comments from the public, and the commissioners will take that path forward and codify this and put a 40 in there, because again, we can always vote less number, but not a greater number. With that, my next item, see if anybody has anything preceding this, but my next item is section 148-13, vehicles permitted in terms. I articulated earlier that I have a concern with adding numbers of vehicles parked in there. And my question is, should every vendor be allowed to park inside the park? They're parking on tree roots and compacting tree roots. I think a lot of harm has already been done to the park. I think that we need to just be cautious of doing any more. Does anybody share those concerns? Because if not, then we'll move on, and if so, then let's talk about it.
Mayor, Patrick Gossett here. I share your concerns, but I don't know what the solution would be, honestly, to kind of think through this, to maybe get some input from some of the vendors themselves or the board members from the farmers market. Again, what is done has been done, and that damage will continue, whether because of, as Kirsten said, for the past 5 years, we've been having seasonally at a maximum of 38 vendors. So how do you manage that going forward to prevent further destruction? Is there a tree mitigation fund? We want to plant more trees. We want to figure out different location, not for the market, but for vendors or something of this nature. So I think it's a subject to be explored, but I don't think there's any quick answer at the moment.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Byrne?
Yeah, well, I would echo the comments that we just heard, and several other thoughts. We're talking only 5 or 6 hours a week where a vehicle drives in, it doesn't drive around, doesn't move back and forth. It drives in, it parks, empties, and when the event is over, it drives out. So, what are we at? 150, 160 hours in an entire year. I also remember a few years ago when there were some concerns raised, and our arborist, Liz Lingo, commented. And I can't remember if it was at a commissioners meeting or at the Mayor's Advisory Committee on Trees, but she made comments that the trees that are in Grove Park are very deep-rooted trees, and that what we're doing with the farmers market is not harming the roots on those trees, and that it's not a problem because of the age and the type of trees that are there. And it may be worthwhile, if this is a large concern, to have Liz enter in with some comments before we vote on this. couple of weeks.
Commissioner Byrne, I do agree that, I recall that, Liz commenting, as you say. I'll also, add that there is one vehicle, permitted per vendor. So that would make 38 vehicles, at the most, on the, in the park there.
Thank you. Commissioner Sernowski?
Yeah, Commissioner Byrne just touched on what I was going to ask is, we're discussing damage to tree roots, and I don't know, if there's damage or not. I think Liz would be the only one and the subject matter expert to say that. So I was just going to ask that she weigh in. And it sounds like she has weighed in the past, and it's probably beneficial to get her to weigh in again.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Legree?
Do any vehicles come and go? I know we're talking about vehicles that park there, but do other vehicles come and unload and bring stuff for the tables and then go park somewhere else a half a block away or something like that? Or are we just talking about 38 vehicles, period, allowed to enter that area?
Sandy, do you have a response?
Just one vehicle per vendor, and we don't have any extra vehicles that come through or are allowed to come through.
Thank you.
38.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, I just echo the questions and what Commissioner Byrne said. It actually has come up in our tree committee meetings in the past. I know that several of our members have been very concerned about the impact on the trees, and I think it would be good to revisit that issue with the city arborist when we talk about other code updates. But in addition to that, I'll just say I thought she had plans for more tree planting at Grove Park as well. And in addition to that, there is a landscaping plan I think Rehoboth and Bloom is doing there. So, I just think all of this should be coordinated so that we have a viable and active farmers market, and we also have all the green space and the tree cover that we desire there.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's move on to the next item that I have, and that is the permit fee. The current permit fee is $100. It's been that way, obviously, for 16 years. You'll see my note that it's this time to make sure that we're covering our police. Chief, what kind of police activity do we have up there because of farmers market?
Typically, we try to put a foot officer with just walking through, just because anytime we have a large gathering, we'll make sure everything's safe, or it's more just as an ambassador, just like they would be on a boardwalk. And then if at time to time, we'll have a bicycle officer just patrolling the streets and just helping out with the parking and direct people to where is a better place to park. So if they're just dropping someone off there on Grove Street to get out, we try to make sure they're not staying there too long and can move to a better area. And right on the corner of Henlopen and Columbia at the intersections.
Okay, so we redivert our personnel to the farmers market during those hours.
Yes, correct. I was just going to add, and if it gets too busy, and sometimes it does, we have to put an officer or a full-time officer out on the roadway on Rehoboth Avenue to help people cross the street, that canal, if it gets too backed up.
So it does consume some time with different personnel at different times. Sharon, do you have anything you want to add on, are we maintaining costs of picking up recycling and extra trash because of those days? Or is this something that we just donate to the farmers market?
So I think that it's been done for so many years without any additional compensation, and we're happy to do it. I mean, it's a very popular venue every Tuesday, and I think everyone's used to just pitching in and providing those services.
Do you see the need to increase the fee at all?
I do see the need to increase the fee. I think, it's been static at $100, and I would recommend an increase to $500.
$500, okay, thank you. Whoop, Ed, your hand's up, down, now it's back up again. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask that, as you know, Mayor, we talked in the last budget meeting. I was kind of taking a look at the fees and seeing if there was some low-hanging fruit that we could maybe make changes for this coming year. And you reminded me that the city manager was asked to, over this coming year, do an extensive review of all of the fees and license fees and et cetera. So I was just going to recommend that we include that in that extensive plan or review. But I also believe that it's probably too low. So I'm also happy to make a change now. I can go either way.
Thank you, Commissioner. One of the things that you had asked was, and we agreed to city manager conducting a analysis of fees. That was to give her enough time. This is in front of us now. I'm comfortable addressing it now and addressing it with her recommended fee. Does anybody else have a comment?
Would the fee go, are we talking about something that would go into effect soon, or are we talking about after this season? Because I guess the vendors have already got their contract. They've already done.
Sharon, do you recall when is the fee due?
The fee's due prior to the season start, so if that's something you want to change, I think we could do that.
Okay.
So there's time, in other words.
Yes.
Anything else? So we've hit on a few things. There's fewer things than I highlighted that we'll have Glenn codify, and then I would suggest anybody else, if they have things that they want to see codified for this season, that they do their own little support document and bring it forward. Otherwise, we'll just go with some of the few things that we discussed today. Commissioner Shanowski?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that since we just brought up increasing the fee by 5 times, we give Sandy an opportunity to comment on that.
Sandy, I think you're being asked, are you happy with a 5-time increase?
That's fine. Yes.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Hey, we appreciate you being here. Are there any other, there's more comments. Ed, Commissioner Sernowski, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gossett.
And this is a question really for our city solicitor with regards to the insurance required. It states in the code currently that there's $1 million for bodily injury and $120,000 for property damage. Are those consistent with the current needs of the city or other insurance needs or bonds that we hold? Should that be investigated for this coming season?
Yeah, I'd be happy to look at that. I'd probably increase the property damage. The bodily injury, it's pretty typical to be about $1 million. I've seen them as high as $3 million in more situations where it's more likely that you could have some sort of an occurrence. So I think the $1 million for bodily injury is okay. With property damage, we might want to move that up a bit. I'll take a look at that and bring something back though.
Thank you. And
Thank you very much.
Curious also on the application for the permit, is there a specific permit for the farmer's market, or does this fall under a special events permit?
It does fall under special events, and the permit requirement is just resubmitted each year with the fee.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Commissioner Legree?
Yes. Chief commented a little bit on having to have someone staff to help help people across the street. We received a letter from a citizen who lives nearby complaining about parking in his yard in front of his driveway. Are we going to discuss that at this time, or when we discuss another talk about parking?
Well, I think now's the time to bring it up.
Chief, have we had,
Yes, sir.
do you have an opinion on, the traffic that extra traffic that's caused by the farmer's market?
Well, it definitely adds to the congestion down in that area because, you know, obviously we have Henlope and Columbia all merging onto the yield area to go around the circle. So that's why we put a bike officer out there, but sometimes the bike officer gets pulled to other complaints with that. But as far as if somebody specifically would call me if they have an issue, somebody in front of their driveway in different areas, then we can go out and try to cone it off before the farmer's market. We do that for other areas. So we definitely can, if I get the information from a commissioner or a homeowner, or even a business in that area, we'd be glad to try to address that individually by putting cones out and parking signs ahead of time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief. I've had to park over at Rise Up and several times because of the congestion and the parking that's nowhere to park. But, you know, I had a nice cup of coffee and a croissant, and I hope it didn't mind, but there are parking problems associated with the farmer's market. City Manager, have you had complaints from citizens about folks parking on their yard or in front of their driveway, or been places where they shouldn't be parking?
We have, from time to time, had complaints, and either the chief or a member of the police department have addressed those, but they're not, I wouldn't say they're, you know, not regular. Some complaints are from regulars that have either moved out of the city or, you know, decided that Tuesday is the time to just let it go for several hours.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not on a regular basis.
Sandy, may I speak to Sandy, Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Sandy, do you have an educational part of your application process that speaks to being considerate of areas, customers being considerate of parking in the streets? And there's not much you can do, but do you speak to that? In other words, if you have a vendor that may have his wife or her husband or their partners coming along, do they have to go find a place to park their cars?
Yes, they would have to do that, but it hasn't been a problem.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. With that, we'll go to the public, see if we can close this topic up. Carol Everhart, anything further to say?
I do agree, it's very congested down there on the day of the farmer's market. We love the farmer's market, and the visitors and residents certainly do. But there is concern down there about some safety issues because it gets so congested and everybody's backing out. So typically they're pulling in. If they do have a place to park, then when they leave, they back out. Or if there's no place to park, it creates they're in and out, and maybe they go back down and come in and out again. So the problem is parking as usual.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carol. Walter Brittingham?
Thank you. First of all, may I suggest some variable message boards like we brought this year? You're using them for parking and COVID purposes. Never got an answer on how much the vendors pay to the farmer's market. I don't really care. I don't care if the farmer's market makes money. We have policemen down there. They stand by the fence and hold the fence up so it doesn't fall down. If we get cones, they would come from DelDOT. We don't have any city Rehoboth cones. It's just plain wrong. The people park on the Henlope and Columbia 3 blocks away. They walk in the roadway. To the city manager and to you all, the trash is not an issue because the trash men are gone in and gone by 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. The chief is totally sugarcoating the calls to the police. First of all, you have to have enough people on duty. You got to have budget sessions. We need more policemen. And yes, we have regular vendors, and yes, the excess vehicles from extra the vendors bring in have to park on the street. But folks, to the people that are in the park, they don't know what the hell's going on out on the street. It's dangerous. It's every week, and it needs to be solved. And you're pussyfooting around on this, and they need to be throttled back. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Marty Johnson? Oh, I'm sorry, Chief.
I was just gonna add, the city does have 2 message boards, and if they're not utilized at the time during farmer's market, we can put that out there, and the city does have traffic cones.
Thank you. Patrick, let me go to our last 2 members of the public, and then I'll call back on you. Marty Johnson, any further last word?
Yes. First, the market makes no money, having been on it since the beginning. It's a nonprofit organization. We do not make money. The second thing is we do place some cones out along the market on the can't remember what street it is, but there are a few cones placed each week. And then the last thing is I just want to thank you for letting us speak.
Thank you, Marty. Lenore Brady, last word?
Yes, hi, you can hear me? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to thank you for letting us speak, and I want to thank you as a farmer in Sussex County. Without the Rehoboth Beach Farmers Market, which I've been part of for a very long time, our farm wouldn't be here. And there's a number of farmers that would not be here without all the farmers markets that are at the beaches. As you know, Georgetown's totally different than Rehoboth or Lewis or Dewey. And we rely on the income and to keep this farm going with you having your farmers market. So with that, I say thank you.
Thank you. With that, that concludes the members of the public speaking today. Commissioner Gossett?
No further comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So we have our path forward. I appreciate all the input. Sandy, I appreciate your participating in this segment with us. Thank you. Next steps are to codify the changes. Glenn will work with you on that, and at the March regular meeting, we'll bring some of these for a vote, understanding that not every topic we talked about today will be looked at, and we'll have to address some things in the future, as we noted. With that, I'd like to go to the next item of business, which is commissioner announcements and comments. Does anybody have anything? If not, we'll go to the next item of business, which is review future meeting dates. Of course, we have a meeting today at 11:30 in a little over 22 minutes. We have a budget meeting number 5 at 1:30 today. Tuesday, tomorrow at 3 o'clock, we have a special meeting on outdoor dining, just a report, pretty much reiterating what was said today. And then we also is meeting number 2 on our tree code review. And then Friday at 4:35, there's a Board of Commissioners meeting to be conducted if we need to do so because of the filing of a appeal on the final action of the Planning Commission. With that, if there's no further comment, hold on a minute. Okay, with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 11:09 p.m. I would like you to listen up, please, since we have another meeting very shortly. As soon as you leave this meeting, I would like you to dial up again immediately for the next meeting so that Max can get everybody on board, do audio checks, etc. Thank you very much. And again, this meeting is adjourned at 11:09 a.m. Thank you.